Okay, so you want to become a master watchmaker. You picture a quiet workshop, your hands moving over a movement so small it fits on a thumbnail, a loop pressed against your eye while the world outside disappears. You imagine selling a watch for $40,000, keeping most of that money, and spending your days doing work that other people can barely comprehend. That picture is missing about 30 years of your life and most of your income. The path from curious beginner to recognized master in this trade runs through apprenticeships that pay almost nothing, examinations that most candidates fail twice before passing, and a market where the customers who buy $40,000 watches already trust a watchmaker they found before you existed. By the time most people reach the level where they can charge serious money for their work, they have spent decades earning very little of it. Americans spend roughly $12 billion on watch repairs and maintenance every year, and that number tells you almost nothing about the individual craftsman running a one-room workshop in Chicago or Portland or Scottsdale. The money in watchmaking concentrates at the brand level, at companies like Patek Philippe, Rolex, and Omega, where marketing departments and retail networks capture most of the value, while the people who disassemble and reassemble the movements by hand receive a fraction of it. The independent master watchmaker who makes a single watch from start to finish, designing and building every component under their own name, occupies a small and economically strange corner of that industry. Before you understand the money, you need to understand what watchmaking covers, because the word describes several different jobs that share almost nothing in common financially. A bench technician at a mall jewelry chain services mass-market watches for $40,000 to $55,000 a year, working through a steady volume of battery replacements and basic cleanings. An independent master watchmaker designs, constructs, and signs a complete watch under their own name, a task that can take 2 years per piece and requires mastery of skills that the best American training programs teach over 2 to 4 years of intensive study. The main American training pipeline runs through a handful of institutions that the American Watchmakers Clockmakers Institute certifies, including the Nicholas Hayek Watchmaking School in Miami, the North Seattle College program in Washington State, and the Lidditz Watch Technicum in Pennsylvania, which Rolex funds and operates as a private facility focused on training technicians for its own service network. Tuition across these programs runs $15,000 to $40,000 in total, and the coursework does not allow shortcuts. Students learn to file metal by hand, to tolerances measured in microns, to assemble a full movement from individual parts, and to diagnose a rate deviation of 2 seconds per day by reading the marks a balance wheel leaves under a timing machine. The gap between American training and the depth required to work on the most complicated watches is something the industry discusses in private more than in public. A graduate from a 2-year American program can service a Rolex Submariner or a TAG Heuer Carrera competently, and those skills cover the vast majority of watches that walk through a shop door in Cincinnati or Dallas or Denver. The watches that command the largest service fees, the perpetual calendars, the tourbillons, the minute repeaters, require hands-on experience with complications that most American curricula cover briefly at best, which is why the watchmakers who specialize in complicated work often spend years seeking out that training on their own after graduation. After graduation, the typical path runs through employment rather than immediate independence, and for good reason. A newly trained watchmaker working at a service center for Rolex or TAG Heuer earns between $45,000 and $70,000 per year in the United States, handling warranty repairs and service work under supervision. Most watchmakers spend 5 to 10 years employed before they consider opening their own workshop because the client relationships and reputation that an independent career requires take years to build. The tools required to run a serious watchmaking workshop cost more than most people expect before they start adding up the line items. A Witchy timing machine, which measures the rate and accuracy of a movement in multiple positions, costs around $2,000 new, and an ultrasonic cleaning machine capable of handling multiple watch components simultaneously runs $1,500 to $4,000 depending on tank size and frequency. A watchmaker's lathe, a full range of screwdrivers in sizes from 0.5 to 3 millimeters, a binocular microscope for fine work, a demagnetizer, and a regulated bench environment with controlled humidity and temperature, add another $5,000 to $15,000, putting the total startup equipment cost for a proper independent workshop at $20,000 to $40,000 before a single customer walks through the door. The service economics of a one-person watchmaking shop depend on the type of work the watchmaker chooses to accept and the hourly rate they can charge for it. A basic service on a mechanical watch, which involves disassembling the movement, cleaning every part in an ultrasonic bath, replacing worn components, lubricating with oils measured in nanoliters, and regulating the rate to within a few seconds per day, takes 4 to 8 hours of skilled labor. At $150 per hour, a rate that established independent watchmakers in cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago charge without hesitation, a basic service bills at $600 to $1,200. The ceiling on a solo watchmaker's income comes from a constraint that no amount of skill removes. The human body can only hold a pair of tweezers for so many hours per day before precision degrades. A watchmaker working at high concentration maxes out at 6 to 7 billable hours of bench time per day, and many experienced craftsmen find that 4 to 5 hours produces better work than 7 hours of accumulated fatigue. The math on annual income for a solo watchmaker doing service and repair in the United States lands between $120,000 and $220,000 gross before expenses, assuming a full client book and no significant downtime. The parts side of the business creates a separate profit center that most people outside the trade do not realize exists. A watchmaker who replaces a mainspring in a Rolex Submariner charges for the part at retail price while purchasing it at a trade discount of 20% to 40%, depending on their purchasing volume and relationship with the distributor. Across a year of service work, parts margin adds $10,000 to $30,000 to a busy watchmaker's income without adding a single hour of bench time. Complications change the economics entirely. The Patek Philippe Calibre 240Q, which powers the company's perpetual calendar watches, contains 304 parts, and adjusting the calendar mechanism after a service requires understanding a gear-train relationship that Patek does not publicly document in detail. A watchmaker in San Francisco or Boston who can confidently service this caliber, who has spent time learning it through independent study or through a factory training course costing several $1,000s to attend, can charge $3,000 to $5,000 for a full service that a general repair shop cannot perform at any price. The scarcity of specialists who can work on complicated movements creates a two-tier market that the American watch industry rarely discusses openly. In the upper tier, a small group of watchmakers who can service antique American pocket watches with railroad-grade complications, early 20th century repeating carriage clocks, or rare vintage chronographs charge rates that reflect the rarity of their knowledge. The Horological Society of New York, founded in 1866 and still operating today as one of the oldest watchmaking organizations in the country, estimates that the number of American watchmakers capable of overhauling a high-grade railroad pocket watch to original specification has fallen below a few hundred nationwide. The watchmakers who cross into original creation, who design and build a complete watch movement under their own name, rather than servicing the movements other manufacturers designed, occupy a territory where almost no Americans have planted a flag. Elgin, Illinois was once home to the Elgin National Watch Company, which at its peak in the early 20th century employed 3,500 workers and produced 1.2 million watches per year, making it the largest watch manufacturer in the country. That factory closed in 1964, and the industrial knowledge it held dispersed so thoroughly that American independent watchmakers who attempt original creation today must reconstruct techniques that the industry abandoned 2 generations ago. The one American who has come closest to building a recognized independent watchmaking brand in the modern era is Sawyer Holt, a self-taught maker based in Portland, Oregon, whose work has appeared in collector publications and sold through private commissions in the $30,000 to $80,000 range. Holt spent over a decade studying historical American pocket watch movements and reverse engineering the hand-finishing techniques that 19th-century American manufacturers used before mass production made them irrelevant. His output runs to a handful of pieces per year, each built on a movement he designed and machined himself using a manual lathe in a workshop the size of a large closet. The auction market for independently made American watches does not yet carry the price premiums that European independents command, and that gap reflects name recognition more than craft quality. A collector in New York or Houston pays $200,000 for a piece from a maker whose name appears in major international publications, and those publications have historically covered European independent watchmakers far more than American ones. The American independent watchmaker who wants to reach the top tier of the collector market faces a credibility gap that no amount of technical skill closes quickly, because that credibility runs through publication coverage, industry award nominations, and the word-of-mouth networks that take years to penetrate. Most working American independent watchmakers solve that problem by focusing on the service and repair market rather than original creation, building reputations inside their own cities rather than chasing international recognition. A watchmaker in Nashville or Seattle who services vintage Rolex references and complicated pocket watches well enough to attract clients from 3 states over can build a business that generates $180,000 to $250,000 in annual gross revenue without ever producing an original piece. That revenue comes from a client base that values discretion, precision, and the specific knowledge that no chain jewelry store can provide. The authorized dealer model is the third path, and for many watchmakers it is the most financially stable one available. The authorized dealer arrangement with brands like Breitling, IWC, or Longines requires the watchmaker to attend factory training courses at the brand's expense, purchase specific tools, and maintain a certain volume of factory warranty service per year. In exchange, the brand sends warranty repair work and provides original parts at trade pricing, creating a guaranteed revenue floor that fills slow periods without the effort of client acquisition. Breitling's authorized service program pays a fixed labor rate per warranty repair, typically $80 to $120 per hour, lower than what the watchmaker charges private clients but predictable in a way that private clients are not. The watchmakers who run the most profitable American shops combine authorized service contracts with a private client book, using the factory work to cover overhead during slow months while the private clients generate the margin that makes the business worth running. A shop in a mid-sized American city with 1 authorized service contract and 200 private clients can generate $300,000 to $400,000 in annual gross revenue with 2 people on staff. The labor shortage in American watchmaking has been building for 2 decades, and it now affects every segment of the trade. The American Watchmakers Clockmakers Institute estimates that the average age of a certified watchmaker in the United States sits above 55, and retirement is pulling experienced practitioners out of the market faster than training programs can replace them. Rolex opened the Lititz Watch Technicum in Pennsylvania specifically to address a service backlog at its American operations, and Tag Heuer ran a recruitment campaign targeting college students in 2022 because its authorized service network could not find qualified applicants through normal channels. The physical demands of the trade create a career arc that people outside it do not anticipate. A watchmaker who begins benchwork in their 20s can maintain precision through their 50s and sometimes into their 60s, but the combination of eye strain, fine motor demand, and the sustained concentration required to assemble a 200-part movement correctly takes a toll that accumulates over decades. Many experienced watchmakers in their 50s reduce bench hours and shift toward higher-value complicated work that takes longer per piece but does not require the same volume of repetitive movements. The income ceiling for a master watchmaker who builds original work under their own name and reaches collector recognition sits at a level that almost no American has tested yet. A maker producing 15 to 25 pieces per year at an average price of $60,000 generates $900,000 to $1.5 million in gross revenue before material costs, and the net margin on a fully self-made watch runs 40% to 60% once the maker's time is established in the price. The floor, The reality for a watchmaker opening their own shop in their first 5 years in a city like Columbus or Kansas City lands between $40,000 and $75,000 net after rent, tools, insurance, and parts inventory. The watchmakers who build lasting careers in this trade share a tolerance for the pace at which it rewards patience. A watchmaker who opens a shop at 30, works with discipline, and builds client relationships across a full career can expect to earn $100,000 to $180,000 net in their peak years, to own tools worth $50,000 to $100,000 that hold their value, and to occupy a position where the phone rings because people need them. The watchmakers who cut prices to fill their bench, who accept movements they lack the training to handle correctly, or who rush work to increase throughput build reputations that collapse faster than they grew, because a single watch returned to a client running 30 seconds per day after a $1,200 service destroys more credibility than 10 satisfied customers can rebuild.